Imagine the quiet calm of a suburban police station, the air thick with the scent of old coffee and paperwork. An officer picks up the phone expecting a routine call, but the voice on the other end is laced with a strange, almost rehearsed anxiety. "My mother, she's missing," the woman says. "I haven't seen her in a couple of days. I'm getting worried." It's a call every police department receives, a common story of a loved one who has strayed. But something about this one feels different. For those of you who believe that the most monstrous secrets are often hidden in the most ordinary places, this story will chill you to the bone. You're about to see how a daughter's desperate search for her mother was not what it seemed. So what happens when the person calling for help is the very reason help is needed? And what dark truth was waiting to be uncovered, just a few feet from where she made the call, behind a closed garage door? Bonner Springs, Kansas. It's the kind of small Midwestern town that prides itself on quiet streets, friendly neighbors, and a strong sense of community. Life here moves at a gentler pace, far from the chaos of the big city. It was in this peaceful setting that 70-year-old Carol Rey had chosen to live. Carol was a woman who had weathered the storms of life with a resilient spirit. A loving mother and grandmother, she was known for her kindness and her devotion to her family. By 2011, however, life had presented her with new challenges. Health problems had begun to limit her independence, and after a series of falls, it became clear she could no longer live on her own. Her daughter, Patricia Lesh, known to everyone as Tricia, stepped in. On the surface, it was the perfect solution. Tricia, a single mother herself, invited Carol to move into her home in Bonner Springs. It seemed like a loving, dutiful daughter caring for her aging mother, a picture of familial devotion. Carol had her own space in the basement, a small apartment-like setup where she could maintain a sense of privacy while still having her daughter close by for support. To the outside world, to their neighbors and friends, the arrangement was ideal. Tricia was seen as a dedicated caregiver, and Carol as a fortunate mother, able to spend her golden years surrounded by family. But inside the walls of that quiet suburban house, a different story was unfolding. The reality of their life together was far from the idyllic picture they presented. The relationship between mother and daughter was strained, fraught with tension that had been simmering for years. Money was a constant source of conflict. Carol lived on a fixed income, her monthly Social Security checks being her only financial lifeline. Tricia, who was reportedly struggling with her own finances, began to exert increasing control over her mother's money. Arguments became more frequent, the loving home transforming into a pressure cooker of resentment and control. Carol wasn't entirely silent about her struggles. She confided in her other children who lived out of state, hinting at the difficulties she was facing. She spoke of Tricia's controlling behavior, the arguments over money, and a growing sense of being trapped. She missed her independence. She missed the simple freedom of managing her own affairs. Her son, concerned by these conversations, made plans to visit, hoping to mediate and perhaps find a better living situation for his mother. He booked a flight to Kansas, a trip that he hoped would bring peace and resolution. He had no idea that he was already too late, and that the quiet tension in the house had already escalated into an unimaginable act of darkness. The days leading up to Carol's disappearance in late 2011 were marked by an eerie silence. The usual patterns of her life came to an abrupt halt. The phone calls to her other children stopped. The familiar sight of her puttering around the yard was gone. For anyone paying close attention, it was as if Carol Rey had simply vanished from the face of the earth. But within the confines of Tricia Lesh's home, she hadn't vanished. She was still there, her presence a horrifying secret that was about to be sealed away. We can only piece together the terror of Carol's final moments from the evidence that would later be uncovered. The arguments over money had likely reached a boiling point. The air in the basement apartment, once a place of refuge, must have crackled with anger and desperation. It's in these unrecorded moments that the true horror lies. One can imagine a final, explosive confrontation. A demand for financial freedom met with a furious refusal. A mother's plea met with a daughter's rage. The violence that followed was both brutal and personal. In that small basement space, the life of Carol Rey was extinguished. The act itself was a violation of the most sacred trust, a final, terrible severing of the bond between a mother and her child. In the aftermath, there was no panic, no immediate call for help. Instead, there was a cold, calculated plan. Tricia Lesh, the daughter and caregiver, now had a secret to keep, a crime to conceal. The first step was to erase her mother from the world, while ensuring her mother's income continued to flow. The basement apartment was cleaned, but not perfectly. Then came the most chilling act of all. The body of Carol Rey, the woman who had given her life, was wrapped unceremoniously in a blue tarp. It was a crude and disrespectful shroud for a woman who had loved her family so deeply. Under the cover of darkness, or perhaps in the stark light of day when no one was watching, Tricia moved her mother's body from the basement to the one place she knew no one would look: the garage. The garage was a place of clutter and forgotten things, the perfect hiding spot. Carol's body was placed inside a large black plastic utility tub, the kind used for gardening or storage. The heavy lid was snapped shut, sealing the gruesome secret inside. Tricia then began to pile things around and on top of the tub. Old boxes, discarded furniture, the general detritus of family life. She created a tomb of clutter, burying her mother under layers of denial and deception. With every box she stacked, she was trying to bury the truth, to make her mother disappear forever. And for a little while it worked. The house fell silent, and Tricia Loesch began the performance of her life, the concerned daughter desperately searching for her missing mother. On October 26, 2011, Tricia Lesh made the call. She dialed the Bonner Springs Police Department and reported her 70-year-old mother, Carol Rey, as a missing person. She told the dispatcher that she hadn't seen her mother for 2 days. She explained that Carol had been upset and had simply walked away from the home, taking nothing with her. She sounded like any worried daughter would, her voice a carefully constructed blend of concern and fear. The police opened a missing persons case. They interviewed Tricia, who painted a picture of a troubled, unhappy mother who had wandered off in a state of distress. She played her part beautifully, providing details and answering questions with a convincing performance. But as the initial investigation unfolded, small inconsistencies began to emerge, tiny cracks in the facade she had so carefully built. Detectives learned that Carol relied on a walker to get around. The idea of a 70-year-old woman with mobility issues simply walking away into the night and vanishing without a trace seemed unlikely. They also spoke to Carol's other children, who told a very different story. They spoke of the tension, the arguments over money, and their mother's fear of Tricia. They insisted that their mother would never have left without contacting them. The dutiful daughter Tricia portrayed was a stranger to them. "You are a detective on the case. You have conflicting stories." The daughter claims her frail mother wandered off, while other family members say she was afraid of the daughter and would never leave without her walker or telling them. What is your most critical next move? A. Organize a large-scale search of the surrounding woods and parks, acting on the daughter's story. B. Focus on Carol's financial records to see if there has been any activity on her accounts since her disappearance. C. Request a search warrant for the daughter's home, believing the answer may be inside the house itself. The correct and most crucial next step was B. While a search of the home was tempting, investigators needed more than just a gut feeling to get a warrant. The fastest way to find a missing person or to uncover foul play is often to follow the money. Detectives subpoenaed Carol Rey's bank records, and what they found was alarming. In the days since Tricia had reported her mother missing, Carol's debit card had been used multiple times. There were withdrawals from ATMs and purchases at local stores. Investigators obtained the surveillance footage from these locations. The images were damning. The person using the debit card, the person draining Carol Rey's bank account, was not Carol. It was her daughter, Tricia Loesch. The lie was unraveling. The concerned daughter was now the prime suspect in a financial crime and a person of interest in a disappearance that was looking more and more like a homicide. Armed with this new evidence, detectives secured a search warrant for Trisha's home on November 2nd, 2011. The search began. The house itself revealed little, though a sense of unease hung in the air. Detectives noted that the basement apartment where Carol lived seemed unusually sterile in some places, while other areas were neglected. The real focus, however, soon shifted to the garage. It was packed to the ceiling with clutter, a chaotic mess of boxes, tools, and junk. As investigators began the painstaking process of clearing the space, they were hit by a faint but unmistakable odor, the smell of decomposition. Their search became more urgent, their movements more deliberate. They followed the scent to a corner of the garage where a large black plastic tub was buried under a pile of debris. The air grew heavy. Every officer in that garage knew what they were about to find. With a deep breath, they pried open the lid. The horror they had been bracing for was confirmed. Inside, wrapped in a blue tarp, was the body of a woman. It was Carol Rey. The search for the missing mother was over. She had been in the garage the entire time, just a few yards from where her daughter had slept, ate, and lived her life for weeks. The discovery of the body is a major turning point, but not the end. You've found the victim in the suspect's garage. Trisha is brought in for questioning. She knows you found the body. As the lead interrogator, what is your primary strategy? A. Confront her immediately with the evidence, accusing her of murder to try and force a confession. B. Use a sympathetic approach, suggesting it might have been an accident or self-defense, giving her a way to tell the story without admitting to cold-blooded murder. C. Focus solely on the financial crimes, getting her to admit to the thefts on camera first, to establish her pattern of deception before even mentioning the body. Experienced interrogators often favor option B. A direct accusation can cause a suspect to shut down completely. By offering a way out, a more palatable version of the story, detectives can open the door for the suspect to start talking. In the interrogation room, Trisha Lesch's composure finally broke. Faced with the undeniable truth, she began to talk, weaving a new story. She admitted her mother was dead, but she claimed she wasn't a murderer. She alleged that they had gotten into an argument and that her mother had attacked her. In the ensuing struggle, she claimed, Carol had a heart attack and died. She had panicked, she said, and didn't know what to do, so she hid the body. It was a story designed to minimize her culpability, to transform a brutal act into a tragic accident. But the evidence told a different tale. The autopsy report revealed that Carol Rey had not died of a heart attack. She had been suffocated. The story of a panicked daughter was just one more lie in a long, tangled web of deceit. With the discovery of Carol Rey's body and the damning results of the autopsy, Patricia Trisha Lesch was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and theft. The community of Bonner Springs was left in a state of shock. The story of the devoted daughter caring for her ailing mother had been a comforting narrative, one that people wanted to believe. The reality that a woman had been murdered and left to decompose in her own daughter's garage was a horror almost too great to comprehend. Trisha Loesch's trial began in 2012, and it laid bare the toxic and tragic reality of her relationship with her mother. The prosecution presented a clear and compelling case. They detailed the financial motive, showing the jury the surveillance videos of Trisha using her mother's debit card after she was already dead. They presented the testimony of Carol's other children, who spoke of their mother's fears and her desperate desire to escape the home. And most powerfully, they presented the forensic evidence. The medical examiner testified that Carol Rey's death was a homicide caused by suffocation. There was no evidence of a heart attack. Trisha's defense team stuck to the story she had told in the interrogation room, that it was a tragic accident born of a physical struggle. They attempted to portray Trisha as an overwhelmed caregiver who snapped under pressure, a victim in her own right. But the jury did not believe her. Her actions after her mother's death, the calculated concealment of the body, the methodical theft of her money, the elaborate charade of the missing persons report, did not speak of panic. They spoke of a cold and remorseless killer. After deliberating, the jury found Patricia Loesch guilty of first-degree murder. They also found her guilty of theft and unlawful financial transaction. In the courtroom, as the verdict was read, there was a quiet sense of justice finally delivered. For Carol's other children, it was a moment of profound sadness and relief. Their mother's killer had been held accountable, but it would never bring back the woman they loved. Patricia Loesch was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. She was also ordered to pay restitution for the money she had stolen from her mother's account. She was sent away to serve her sentence, leaving behind a shattered family and a community struggling to understand how such a dark secret could fester behind the closed doors of a quiet suburban home. The case of Carol Rey is a deeply unsettling tragedy. It's a story that forces us to look at the darkness that can exist within the most sacred of family bonds. On the surface, it was a story of a daughter's care, but it was a facade, a carefully constructed illusion hiding a reality of control, resentment, and greed. It serves as a stark and painful reminder that abuse and violence are not always loud and visible. Sometimes they are silent, insidious forces that grow in the quiet spaces of a home, hidden from the view of the outside world. Carol Rey deserved to live out her final years in peace and dignity, surrounded by genuine love, not imprisoned by fear. Her trust was betrayed in the most horrific way imaginable, by the one person who should have been her fiercest protector. This tragic event reminds us that we must listen to the quiet pleas for help, to pay attention to the subtle signs of distress in our elderly and vulnerable loved ones. For Carol, the warnings were there, but help arrived too late. Her story is a heartbreaking testament to a daughter's ultimate betrayal and a chilling lesson on the secrets that can lie buried, just waiting to be discovered behind a closed garage door.